In today's beginner-friendly watercolor tutorial, I am sharing all my best tips and tricks for painting white flowers on white paper. Hey gang, welcome back. My name is Shayda Campbell, and on this channel we make art together and it's fun, not scary. So today we're continuing our watercolor painting and we're gonna paint white flowers. Tricky, I know, but also really fun. Now I have this great piece of reference material, the Flower Color Guide. It's an awesome book. I'm gonna link it in my Amazon links below, so check the video description if you wanna grab a copy. And today I wanna look at a few white flowers. First, ranunculus. This is just great reference material. It's nice to paint from a photo sometimes versus a screen, and this book has such awesome photographs. And you can go by color, obviously, the Flower Color Guide. So today I'm kind of flipping through the white flowers, and I was really drawn to the ranunculus and the different roses. I just had a bit of a flip through, and I really like these roses, these loose, floppy roses that have that golden yellow stamen. I kind of worked my way into the peaches and pinks because maybe we'll include a few like lightest of pink roses in our white painting. It's always nice to add a little bit of color to our whites just to make the painting kind of come alive. And then I also really love the look of this larkspur. Let me flip over here. It's just so weedy and it has these tiny little leaves and tiny little blossoms, so we might incorporate a bit of that as well. Anyway, let's get started. Let's start by talking about supplies. I'm working on hot pressed 140-pound paper. Hot pressed is very smooth, but you might prefer the tooth and texture of cold pressed, doesn't matter. For brushes, I've got a number 8 round brush. I also have something a little smaller, number 6 round brush, and all of these supplies are linked in the video description, and I have a filbert there as well, and those are really nice for painting petals and doing sort of messy, natural, organic shapes. So if you have one of those, grab it. It's not necessary though. And then I have my usual watercolor set from Munyo, 2 glasses of clean water, paper towel for blotting my brush, and I have a little scrap paper here for testing out some of the whites as I mix them. And then I'm going to use an older brush to do my mixing, just because mixing colors can be a little hard on your brushes. So save your old brushes when they're no longer holding a point and use them for mixing. What I'm doing is wetting some of the colors that I know I want to use, like white, French gray, and Van Dyke brown. And then with that wet brush, I scrub at my cake of white paint, and I'm bringing the white pigment over to the palette. And then I can grab a little bit of French gray and mix it in, and I'm going to mix sort of all these different shades of white, except they're not really white. They're sort of light gray and the lightest of beige. And I do that by mixing white paint with just a tiny hint of Van Dyke brown and a tiny hint of French gray. And you can see on my palette I have a darker grayish white and a beigey white, and the result is all these different whites, white in air quotes, that I can pull from as I'm doing my painting. So I've got everything mixed up ahead of time when I begin to paint. I'm also going to mix a little magenta and Joan Brilliant with white, and that'll give me a nice peachy color. Anyways, let's start testing out some of these colors. You can see I've got the lightest little hint of gray white and this creamy beige, and they're just so barely there, but by using some of the darker whites, white again in air quotes, and the peachy whites, we'll be able to make these white flowers really pop on a white page, which is kind of incredible. From there, we're also going to mix up a few natural looking greens. I'm mixing my favorite phthalo green with olive brown, and then I mixed olive green with sap green, and that's going to give me some nice natural mossy greens. Okay, colors are mixed up. We're ready to paint white flowers, but before we begin, I want to mention some other good stuff that's happening this month on the channel. For one, I'm showing you how to paint beautiful, loose watercolor daisies. It's building on the skills that we'll learn in today's video, so make sure you're subscribed to this channel with your notifications on so that you don't miss out, because this is a great video. I also have a super duper video for my channel patrons. Last month, I released a loose watercolor tutorial in real time showing every single step, and I heard you when you said that you loved it. So this month we're doing loose watercolor peonies in real time with nothing sped up or removed. If you want to support the channel and watch these extra monthly tutorials, there's like 40 of them, head to my Patreon page at patreon.com/Shayda Campbell. Okay, back to our white flowers. We're going to grab a little of that light white in our brush, blot the brush, and then we begin our loose rose by painting one petal at a time. Start with that top petal, one to the right, one to the left. I just kind of make these funny organic shapes. I don't overthink it. I kind of add a little pressure to that brush and just see what sort of shape comes off of the end of that brush, and then I leave it alone. I'm kind of adding some little brush strokes along the bottom here, making it look like the petals are falling away. And then I grab from that darker creamy beige and I add a little bit of a darker color at the center, leaving sort of a round area right in the middle. Then, working quickly, I rinse my brush and I grab a bit of that dark green and I'm going to add some little curving stems and these tiny leaves. And the leaves are really just one or two loose brush strokes, and I'm adding some little curly Q bits, and I want to get like a little bit of a blend of white and green, not too much. You want the flower to be lightly wet at this point, not puddle wet, so that you'll just get that delicate little blend of green and white. And then while the flower is still lightly wet, we take a bit of, I think I'm using raw sienna here, and we're just going to do a bit of dotting at the center. And that's it. Our next white flower is that ranunculus that I showed you at the beginning, and using my round brush, I use the belly of the brush, which is the larger part, to do these kind of C-shaped, these curving brush strokes, and they all sort of go around and form a circle in the middle. Then I use the tip of the brush to do these thin curving brush strokes surrounding the center so that I get the look of these layers and layers of petals, and that really gives me the look of the ranunculus. Remember, with loose watercolor florals, it's about capturing some of the elements of the flower without worrying too much about super realism or getting every little detail. So we want to just create the look that there are lots and lots of petals without spending too much time on it, basically. I've done some larger petals then falling away at the bottom there. And while the flower is still lightly wet, I take my green in my brush and I run that crooked stem right from the petal down towards the bottom of the page, and I get a little blend of white and green. And then I'm also kind of shaking and wiggling my brush, making large, messy leaves and little buds, and the stems all kind of wiggle a little bit. And then I did just a bit of dotting at the center. And then I grab a little yellow on the tip of my round brush and we create a little halo here of dots and lines, very delicate. And finally, we work some wet on dry magic. The flower is dry. We come back in with a darker gray beige and add some thin curving lines to help with that look of multiple petals. Okay, this is when a painting like this gets really fun for me. I've got my palette all set up. I can grab the lightest of beigey pinks or the lightest of gray whites, and I can just play and continue across the page, adding flowers of all different shapes and sizes, and that's exactly what you're going to see me do. I did this simple 5-petal flower. Now I'm going to grab some white and we're going to do the same thing. So we're creating an arrangement. We're focusing on our brush strokes and just keeping everything loose and a little bit abstracted. I released a video last month in July all about abstracted roses and why abstraction is so freeing as an artist, because you get to decide how much you kind of change and play with your subject. And in this case, the subject is roses and ranunculus. And that's kind of a really cool thing, that you get to pick how much you kind of mess up the rose or the ranunculus. So go watch that video if you're struggling with feeling like you always need to be perfect. It's a really kind of fun approach when you kind of loosen up and literally paint these loose abstracted florals. I also wanted to say thank you for the overwhelmingly positive response on Friday's video, in which I was talking about my struggle with addiction and how art and creativity have had such a positive impact on my mental health over the years. This is a discussion that I really want to continue with you. Just sharing my truth makes me feel like I'm breathing fresher air. It sounds cliche, but it was so freeing to share that. And a lot of you shared, and I read all of your messages and comments, and I appreciated them. And we're going to continue this discussion. It is nowhere near over. So go watch that video if you haven't already. For now, let's add some larkspur to our arrangement. So when I'm doing a loose floral, I like to paint the larger flowers first, and then a great way to kind of finish off a piece is to add something a little smaller, a little more delicate, and in this case, the larkspur is kind of perfect for that. So what I want to do is mix up a really cool pink. I'm going to mix my cool pink with a little bit of purple, and there's lots of white in there as well, of course, and we'll use that nice, cool, almost purpley pink to add a little bit of color to this piece, because another great way to make your white flowers really pop off the page is to frame them. So not only are we using these beiges and grays, we're also framing the white flowers with green leaves and potentially pink or blue or whatever color flowers. So think about kind of trying to place some of those leaves and little larkspur petals right up against your white flowers so that it looks like the white flowers are sitting in front of the leaves or in front of the larkspur. And in that way, it really helps the white flowers to jump off of that white paper. Just another trick for you. Why am I talking about this for so long? Anyways, I am painting larkspur by making these messy little brush strokes. It's like one petal, two petals. You can see how loose and free these shapes are. They really don't mean anything at all. Some of them are just blobs. Some of them are little V shapes or heart shapes. There's maybe two in there that actually look like a flower. The shape really doesn't matter. That's the fun of these loose or gestural florals. We get to be so free. Have I said that already? I think I have. Anyway, I'm also grabbing a really dark green for the larkspur. I mixed brown in with that phthalo green, and it's giving me this really dramatic green that looks so good when I paint those tiny little leaves. And the leaves are barely more than a line, like just a whoosh of the brush. That's all we need. And having this little delicate leaf and this little delicate flower, it's really going to help this whole painting just look so much more detailed and interesting. And yeah, I think the larkspur is really helping the entire piece to come together. So let's have a bit of fun and finish this off. Okay, I'm happy with that. The larkspur has framed everything beautifully. Now I want to do a little more wet on dry. We'll take that darker creamy beige and we'll just kind of amp things up a bit. If you feel like your paintings sometimes look flat, do not despair. You always have your wet on dry technique. Just wait for everything to dry and then go back in. Using this technique gives you a heck of a lot of precision. You'll be able to add all that shading like I'm doing there, adding a little bit of a darker beige. And at this point, I also just want to go around and say, hey, where do I need another green stem? Where do I need a little bit of a darker gray? Where do I maybe want to amp up these stamens? I could add a bit of a darker brown and do some loose dotting and really make the center of the flower pop. So these are all those finishing touches. All of it is done wet on dry, very, very precise. I can be very precise. And yeah, the little finishing touches are sometimes what make the piece. So push through and don't give up on a painting. Sometimes I think we all have that bad habit. Keep with it, stick with it, and wait till the end. And this is the end for me. Thanks for watching this white watercolor floral tutorial. If you would like to see the daisies video, make sure you're subscribed to this channel with the notifications on. And for the real-time peonies, head over to Patreon and sign up. It's only $2 a month or $22 for the year. The peony video comes out this Saturday.